Happy Memorial Day, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful day with your families. Tonight, we'll be doing another Scott Fish Bowl mock draft with a fantastic guest I am eager to introduce to you. Today's May 26th, and we still don't know this year's scoring system yet. But that's okay, because we're going to have a mock draft for it anyway. Based on last year's scoring, we'll go through 12 rounds, and we'll have ourselves some good times. Coming to you live on Optimus Fantasy, this is Monday Night Mock Drafts. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan right here on Optimus Fantasy. Coming to you every Monday night until week 1 of the NFL season. I am your host, Evan Sather. Joining me tonight for another Scott Fish Bowl mock draft is the co-host of Mock It Like It's Hot on the Club Fantasy FFL YouTube channel. He is also a staff writer for the Football Guys. Please welcome Ryan Weisse.
Hello.
Ryan, welcome to the show. What is up? How are you doing, my friend?
Fantastic, Evan. Thanks for having me. I think this might actually be my first guest appearance on Optimus, even though I've been friends with these guys forever. So thank you for extending the olive branch.
Hey, absolutely. And for those of you listening right now, if you've never seen Club Fantasy FFL's live streams, or if you've never seen the episodes of Mock It Like It's Hot, which I've been a guest, yes. Ryan was very kind last August to have me on as a guest as the last 10-team mock draft for one quarterback PPR leagues, and I was a complete unknown on the fantasy football scene, and I just happened to message him wondering, hey, do you have any guest spots open? I'd like to come on. Not knowing a thing about me, Ryan took a chance on me. It was a great episode, and I am so happy. I feel like I'm returning the favor here, so it makes me happy that you're on this show tonight too, Ryan.
No, that's one of the things I absolutely adore about the fantasy industry, and especially with the mock draft show, was something I really set out to do, was to reach out to folks who maybe haven't done podcasts but are knowledgeable about football, because we all kind of had this fantasy football thing in common, but we all kind of have mock drafting in common too. And so what a more laid back environment than knocking out a mock draft show together.
Absolutely. And for those of you who may have missed it last week too, I need to be transparent. This is my first year doing Scott Fish Bowl. I have never done a Scott Fish Bowl before. So it makes me grateful that I've at least got other people on my Optimus team, as well as my guest here who's definitely done it before, being able to help me get some more knowledge on what to expect in these drafts. And I'm sure that the live drafts are gonna be great too, because I will be present at the Chicago live draft coming up at the end of June next month, actually. Ryan, are you going to be attending the live draft as well?
I am. So I live in Albany, New York, which is upstate, but I take any opportunity I can to visit New York City. So for the last 3 years, I have done the New York City Live, and I will be once again at the New York City Live draft. Just an absolutely wonderful event put together by Ryan Hallam.
That's wonderful to hear. So those of you listening, the Chicago live draft may still have some open spots in case you're local, you happen to be in town, and you want to stop by to watch some live drafts happen. Let us know on either Blue Sky or Twitter, and we may be able to get you in if you're interested. So Ryan, I think we shouldn't keep the people waiting much longer. Are you ready, sir?
Absolutely.
All right. So I don't actually have. Actually, before we do that, we should probably go over the rule screen just to let the people know that these are based off of last year's rules. So
usually he's pretty good about the first week of June, so we're probably about 10 or so days away from getting this year's rule set.
Yeah. So this is once again the second episode of the early Scott Fish Bowl mock draft. So based off of last year's scoring and last year's rules, one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, no kickers, even though, well, you can still start a kicker if you want, one super flex and 6 flex spots. No trading, 11 on your bench, $100 blind bidding waivers. So how did you like this particular format last year, Ryan?
It was a blast. The biggest change last year, Scott went hand in hand with the NFL with the kick return stuff. And we all kind of like fell in love with Rashid Shaheed, and he was a monster to start the season. Kavonte Turpin fell under everybody's radar. He was kind of the monster when it came to the kick return yards. Everything else has been pretty well what we've done with Scott Fish for, I believe, 2 seasons before this. But the kick returns were a pretty big adjustment to make, and it definitely added a whole nother element of fun to the situation.
I can only imagine. If you've never heard me before, or you should know that I am a massive hater on the Superflex spot, so whether or not I like it, I'm going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring something up real quick. I bring this up on shows far more often than I should. 3 years ago, Scott had massive negative points for interceptions and incompletions, and it made Superflex to the point where you might have enjoyed it, Evan. There was no point in starting bad quarterbacks in your second quarterback spot. You definitely, it was better to go, and I had to do this for points in the year because of injuries. It was better to go find another tight end, another wide receiver. And in that point, I think even kickers were eligible to be flexed on MFL. You wanted to play a second kicker before you wanted to play a bad quarterback. And that is something I wish he'd bring back, but I understand that this is points for everybody, so we're not going to do that probably.
Absolutely. So then passing, rushing, receiving, and receptions, nothing out of the ordinary, I would say. 1 point for every 50 yards in passing, 1 point for every 10 yards in rushing and receiving, half PPR for quarterbacks, kickers, and running backs if they happen to catch the ball, and tight end premium with 1.5 points. So I should probably ask you, Ryan, so how did you do last year in your Scott Fish Bowl tournament?
Did well. I believe got into the final leg in the top 200 into the first leg of the playoffs. I actually think I shot into like the top 40, had a terrible week 14, where I lost both my quarterbacks to bye weeks, Bo Nix and somebody else. Can't remember who the other quarterback was. So with no quarterbacks, was not able to hit the scoring threshold to get past week 14.
Well, making it to week 14 is still an accomplishment, I hope, right?
Yeah, I don't play Scott Fish Bowl to win. There are so many people in this tournament. Playing it to win is going to go to disappointment. I play it to have as much fun as possible, building my team as much fun as possible, but more importantly, meeting the people at the lives and interacting with your league is just always a blast. So I was excited about how the season went down last year.
I'd say that's my top want for this, because I've never actually done a live draft where they put the players on the sticky board for when you make your pick.
I remember that when we did your show together. I was actually going to bring that up. I was going to ask if this was your first, because I asked about it during the mock draft. Live drafts, I've been doing live drafts since I started fantasy over 25 years ago, and it is a experience like no other. It's one of my favorite things to do. So
absolutely. We will go through this quickly, but we don't want to keep the people waiting too much longer. We'll get this started momentarily. I just want to go over just the bonus, the kicking. I actually like this kicking scoring system. I'm actually thinking about implementing it in my home leagues, in my home Dynasty League, and maybe it'll make me an unpopular commissioner, but I still value kickers. I'm probably among the rare few.
I like kickers as well. There was actually some jokes being made about that with Jamie, who's in the chat right now. Some jokes being made about that in the Club Fantasy group chat this morning, the mock draft chat, about whether we like kickers or not. And I'm in that small minority with you. I still enjoy kickers in fantasy football. Me
as well. So, yeah. So this is pretty straightforward. I think we should get into it, right, Ryan?
Yeah. Most of the people tuning into this, they know the wacky Scott Fish Bowl scoring.
So I'm actually waiting for the start button to be pressed, as I don't actually have control over this mock draft. So we'll get that changed in the future here. But here we go.
There we go.
Lando Nice is up first. So Ryan, your community, Club Fantasy FFL, I have to give them massive props. They came quickly when you advertised this mock draft board. I was so happy to see it fill up by lunchtime today. That's how quickly we got this filled up since this morning. So I'm happy to see back a lot of the regulars that we typically get. I've seen the Shia LaBeouf guy before. Vince Mapstone is my personal mock drafting goat. I don't mean to play favorites here, but he's always a champ.
Vince is also organizing the Australia Scott Fish Bowl live. So shout out to Vince.
Oh, I didn't know Vince was behind that too.
He's
very nice.
He's the organizer for the one down in Australia this year. So big shoes for Scott, big shoes for Scott, but big moves for Vince.
So unfortunately, it looks like Lando Nice either forgot that it was right now, but maybe they'll join later. This will have to be auto draft for now. So Jaden Daniels goes first, being that this is super flex. Ryan, I have Jaden Daniels as my quarterback one in Dynasty rankings right now. What about you? How high are you on Jaden Daniels this year?
So he is my quarterback one in redraft. I'm not ready to move him ahead of the established guys in Dynasty quite yet. So I have him, I believe, at 4 off the top of my head for my Dynasty rankings, behind Allen, Hurts, and why am I blank? Lamar Jackson. So I have him right there in that grouping. Daniel's just outside of it just because I want to see it for more than 1 year in Dynasty just because of the cost that's going to be associated with him. However, in redraft, he would also be my first quarterback off the board in a draft like Scott Fish Bowl.
I absolutely love the offense he's got this year out there in DC. He's got Deebo Samuel now as his second wide receiver behind Scary Terry McLaurin. Both of those wide receivers are 29, and I'm not at all worried just about age alone. They're both still in fantastic shape. I'm very curious to see how Cliff Kingsbury is going to be using Deebo Samuel this year. I'm hoping that Deebo will get more consistent usage, unlike the Kyle Shanahan offense where, you know, everything is kind of weird in San Francisco. Sometimes this guy won't get the ball. Sometimes that guy won't get the ball. Do you have that same worry about Deebo Samuel on the Washington Commanders this year?
No, the thing is, for fantasy football, Deebo is always going to be that guy unless a massive amount of injuries happen where he becomes the focal point of his offense. Deebo isn't made to be the focal point of an offense. Deebo is made for an offense like what we're going to see out of Washington this year. So is it a concern for fantasy football? Yes. But for real football and for the growth of Jaden Daniels, I love every bit of this for Deebo.
I can't disagree with you at all. I think he's going to be getting a lot of sweet production. I think he's also going to get some carries just like he did in San Francisco, because I'm no hater of Brian Robinson, but their backfield is a kind of shaky. I mean, Brian Robinson has always been a bit of a platoon back. I'll let you make your pick here.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler's getting up there in age. I don't think he's going to be valuable for that much longer, but I could still see some sleeper value late for Austin Eckler. Do you have Austin Eckler in a same tier as a possible sleeper pick?
So Eckler's always been an interesting pick for me. I love receiving backs. I've done the studies on targets versus carries. The interesting thing is bringing in Deebo is naturally going to lessen the value that we're going to see out of Eckler and Brian Robinson. I still think there's going to be some receiving chops there for Eckler, but Deebo's probably at a position right now in his career where he can do what they expected of Eckler, but better. Just putting it bluntly. I still think there's going to be a role for Eckler. I think last year he felt like a flex sleeper. I think this year he's probably more of an RB4 with your fingers crossed.
That, I believe, would be worst case scenario for somebody like him, and I would be more inclined to agree with you on that, unfortunately. I think Austin Eckler's best days are behind him. He did not look good at all in his last year as a Los Angeles Charger, and now that this is coming back around to me, let's see who I can go with here. Do I like this? Do I think we're going to go with Malik Neighbors? So, Ryan, do you have any concern whatsoever about Malik Neighbors' elite production that he showed last year, considering the quarterback situation? Is it Russell Wilson? Is it Jameis Winston? Does Jackson Dart see any playing time this year? What's your take on the whole situation?
No matter who it is, it's going to be better than what we saw from the position last year. So I am not concerned about what we're going to get from Malik Neighbors or what we're going to get from the quarterback position. What I think is more interesting about Neighbors is Neighbors' yards per catch last year. I don't have the data right in front of me right now. I swear it was like sub 12. It was not good, and it's not what you expect from his athletic profile whatsoever. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, 11 even. When you look at the guys he was comped to, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, the guys coming out of LSU, 13.4, 14.9. Now with legit quarterbacking in New York, I think there's a good chance we're actually going to see far more efficiency out of Malik Neighbors and better yards per catch. I don't know that he's going to see the crazy target volume he saw last year, but there's really no reason not to. And I think we're going to see him do better with those targets. It's wheels up for Malik Neighbors for me this year.
I agree, and it is no surprise whatsoever that Malik Neighbors' yards per reception is not good considering the state of the New York Giants offense. But if you're in a PPR league, do you really care?
Well, no, because I mean, that's what's interesting is we're going to be covering the Giants for Club Fantasy here soon. And I actually picked that I wanted to talk about Wan'Dale Robinson, not Malik Neighbors. Everybody knows Malik Neighbors, and everyone knows Malik Neighbors is going to go in the first round. Wan'Dale Robinson was targeted 140 times last year and caught 93 balls. In PPR, those are really, really good numbers. And I'm real interested to see if Wan'Dale Robinson's actually going to be the guy who can keep doing what he did last year. He's basically still free in drafts. He was the wide receiver 36 in PPR scoring last year.
Yeah, and the New York Giants still do not have a solid wide receiver too, and that's got to be Wan'Dale Robinson. I can't imagine Darius Slayton being a guy that's going to have sleeper value.
They threw some money at Darius Slayton. I've always liked Darius Slayton. You'll catch no Darius Slayton slander from me. But he's very much a one-trick pony, and there's no denying that. He is a 9-route guy. Go out there, chuck it, and let him go get it. But where I think you could see even hurt from Darius Slayton this season is Malik Neighbors might finally slide into that role, the role he probably should have been in more last year. And if Malik Neighbors takes over that role, he's clearly going to be better at it than Darius Slayton. And then you still have Wan'Dale, and hopefully I'm a big Theo Johnson guy. I'd like to see Theo Johnson get a little bit more involved on the underneath routes as well. So.
Absolutely. I picked up Daniel Bellinger a couple of years ago as a sleeper rookie tight end, and he didn't look all that bad after Darren Waller retired, but I think the Giants were looking for more production out of tight end.
Broke his eye socket or whatever last year and never looked right after coming back from that.
That's right. I completely forgot about that injury that he picked up. That's kind of a hard accomplishment to have when you're wearing a football helmet with a face mask.
Like I never dug deep into it because Bellinger was kind of an afterthought already at that point, but it's an interesting injury and not one we've heard much about in NFL circles.
Gosh. So I was going to say we're not yet through 3 rounds, but through the first 2 rounds before we got through the 3rd round reversal, I like what you've done here so far, Ryan, with you got Bijan Robinson to kick things off, then you picked up Bo Nix, and now you got Jonathan Taylor. You got 2 hero running backs. Yep. You can go wide receiver later. Is this the intention from drafting from the 8th spot? Is this what you would do? Yeah,
so a moment of clarity for everybody who's watching. I'm picking from the 11th spot. I always try to pick from the 11th spot during 3rd round reversal drafts. If you're not familiar with 3rd round reversal, after the 2nd round, the person who picked first in the 2nd round picks first again in the 3rd round, basically to counteract the advantage from picking so late in the 1st round. So in a 3rd round reversal, I think 11 is the sweet spot. You have just 4 picks in between your 1st and 2nd pick, and then you just have to wait 1 more round to make your 3rd pick. You took my 11th spot. We were the first 2 in the draft. You're picking 11 this year as well. So we'll probably be in another group chat together because usually there's a chat for all the 11s. It might even be created already. I'll need to get involved in it. So I took 8 this year because a good friend of mine is the 8, Lewis Hall, who I met through Scott Fish Bowl Live, and he and I have become fast friends. He's the 8 in my league. And I was like, well, let's see what kind of team Lewis can throw together from the 8 spot. And I am thoroughly in love with what I've put together so far myself. I will say, I last year, my intention was to also, I think people rush on quarterbacks in Superflex in general, but certainly in Scott Fish Bowl. I think there are other scoring avenues in Scott Fish Bowl that need to be explored. But last year, I had every intention on punting at quarterback. Everybody else in the league punted at quarterback. So when it got to me at 11, I had to go quarterback at 11 and 15. So,
oh my gosh. So Jamie brings up an interesting question. I'm assuming that they're talking about Derrick Henry rather than Hunter Henry. Derrick Henry right now is still on the board. He's behind a bunch of other running backs that have been taken so far. We're going off of sleeper ADP here, even then. I
can actually address this with my own specific team. I actually have Derrick Henry ahead of Jonathan Taylor, but you got to play the game. And I was looking at ADP, and Derrick Henry's ADP on the current draft that we're doing on Sleeper is 68. I don't know if that is just because most 2-quarterback leagues are also dynasty leagues. It feels really low for Derrick Henry's ADP to be 68. So I took Jonathan Taylor, even though I have Henry ahead, knowing full well if Henry makes it to me in 2 more picks, Jamie, you're going to have his fate in your hands. If Henry makes it to me in 2 more picks, he will be on my roster, and I will triple tap running back to start this whole thing off. So,
yeah, no, I think that's a pretty plausible explanation for where we're seeing with Derrick Henry, as I still think a lot of people are sleeping on him. They're getting scared of his age. They're getting scared of everything he has to offer left in at this stage in his career. But he's on a team that's built for the run, even whether it was Greg Roman as the OC or whether I'm blanking on the name of their current offensive coordinator, but he did a tremendous job between Lamar Jackson getting a lot of career highs in addition to Derrick Henry still looking like $1 million in his late 20s. I can't imagine leaving Derrick Henry on the board even this late. Like, Jamie, this is amazing value for the 4th round.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at just focusing on Jamie's team in general, you have the best pure thrower in the NFL in the first round at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was going to be the last quarterback. The 5 quarterbacks that went were the 5 quarterbacks I was willing to go over position players. So Joe Burrow, I think, was excellent value. You get the arguably number 1 wide receiver. Obviously, there are cases to be made for other wide receivers, but CeeDee Lamb volume-wise, it's going to be hard to beat. Jamar Chase will obviously make his run. Drake May, an excellent 3rd-round pick in this scoring format. But then I want to talk a little bit about Derrick Henry. One thing that people neglect in this scoring format is the extra points for first downs. And the easiest way to judge running back first downs is volume. It kind of breaks down into, I had the stats with me at one point, where you can expect a running back first down. Let me see if I can find it in my scoring real quick. You can expect a running back first down every 4 carries, basically, which kind of lines up with yards per carry, things like that, but every 4 carries. Nobody's going to see more carries than Derrick Henry. So those extra points out of first downs that Jamie's now going to get out of his 4th round pick is going to be massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you on this, Jamie. I think if this was the real deal, I'd be praising you so hard for getting an unbelievable steal as your hero running back. Like, yeah. I would be very surprised if there were any live or slow drafts that left Derrick Henry going this late for the real deal.
Yeah, Derrick Henry scored 453 points in Scott Fish Bowl last year. Only Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position scored more points than Derrick Henry did.
That's simply incredible. Gosh. So, Ryan, I want to take things in a different direction now that we're through 4 rounds. Plenty of people have also punted at quarterback, despite this being a Superflex format. Yeah. The only team that has not drafted a quarterback yet, once again this week, is Brian over here, Brock's Gym. Do you agree with punting at quarterback going this late in the draft, as he's coming up on his 5th round pick?
Typically that would be a big no from me. It's interesting if you get into a draft like this where everybody punts, it can work out really nicely for you. Because there's a lot of value on the board right now. Like right now, I am regretting every decision I made at wide receiver as I'm kind of glancing, about to take my first wide receiver. But like, it puts me in an interesting conundrum because while I'm willing to wait a round or 3 on quarterbacks in Superflex, I'll usually try to be one of the first people to get my 3rd quarterback so I can just set it and forget it. And that's where you get into an awkward situation with Brock's Gym, because let's say I had taken a quarterback there. Now we're looking at just quickly glancing at the pool, 4 to 5 legit starting quarterbacks left. Now there's still some value on this board. Don't get me wrong. There's some really good value, which is why I would not have taken quarterback here. But as long as you have multiple teams doing it, it can work out really well for you, except for the team that gets stuck holding the bag.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to put it.
And he continues it. He's going to see how far he can take this. So.
And now he went TreVeyon Henderson as his first running back as well. So a little bit of rookie talk for you, Ryan. Yeah. I don't believe we talked about TreVeyon Henderson when I appeared last month on the rookie draft show when we had Austin with us as well. Yeah. I don't think TreVeyon Henderson, right? Yeah. I don't believe he came up much in a conversation. Now that we know he's a New England Patriot, he'll assumingly split the backfield with Ramondre Stevenson. First of all, how do you like Henderson's landing spot? And two, how do you like Ramondre Stevenson's value now?
So it's an obvious knock to Ramondre Stevenson. I'll start with him only because he was the best back in that backfield, but he had his issues last year. Let's be very clear. The fumble issues got him benched on 2 different occasions for Antonio Gibson last year. It's a new regime, and that new regime actually gives me renewed hope for both of these 2 players. And that kind of lends me to where I want to go with Henderson. This is a very fast, shifty, with receiving chops running back and a Josh McDaniel offense. This feels like James White all over again. And if we're going to see 85 to 100 targets out of Travion Henderson, even if he only ends up with 100 carries, giving another 200 to Ramondre Stevenson, I think they are both very viable backs in fantasy football. Henderson certainly has better upside than Ramondre Stevenson. The fact of the matter is, to have a lot of fantasy value as the big back in this offense, you need to score double-digit touchdowns, and I'm not confident Ramondre Stevenson can do that. However, I am very confident that Travion Henderson is a more complete player than James White was. Travion Henderson could do some really, really nice things in this offense. I think New England was a great landing spot.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of the same comparisons to James White with Travion Henderson, but it sounds to me that he's going to have the more complete skill set, which is why he's in the top 5 for running backs in this year's draft class. But I still have Quinshon Judkins ranked above him in my rookie running back rankings. Alex seems to agree that Judkins is going to kill it this year on the Cleveland Browns. What do you think about Judkins' landing spot with what's his face behind him? I'm blanking on the other rookie that they drafted.
Dylan Sampson.
Yes, thank you.
So go ahead.
I was about to ask, so what do you think about his landing spot based off of the Cleveland Browns offense and how ugly it looks so far?
So I think you took the words out of my mouth there. My larger concern for Quinshon Judkins is the Cleveland Browns offense. I'll start with obvious concerns. I don't think Jerome Ford's necessarily going to go anywhere. This coaching staff seems to like Jerome Ford. He's not a great player by any stretch, but I think he has the confidence of Kevin Stefanski, and Kevin Stefanski is taking back over the offense this year. And I don't think it's not for anything that the year Kevin Stefanski is taking back over the offense, they also drafted 2 running backs. So I think we're going to see a heavy mix of the 3, which is already a nightmare for fantasy football. But now you're going to throw in a 3-player committee on a team that might be at bottom of the league in red zone opportunities this year. And I think that's just a nightmare for fantasy managers. And I think it's a nightmare for Quinshon Judkins this season.
First of all, I actually did not know that Kevin Stefanski is taking back offensive control of this team, which is actually pretty good news. I remember the damage he was doing with the Minnesota Vikings, and I was quite impressed with it, despite my obvious hatred for the Vikings. But so do you think this is a great opportunity for a Judkins to possibly shoo away those fears by replacing the Nick Chubb role? Do you think he has a chance to take 60 to 70% of the snaps?
100%. He's the most talented back in that backfield. Dylan Sampson, I believe, was taken 2, even maybe 3 rounds later, but certainly at least 2 rounds later. I think Judkins is going to be the guy. He was, I believe, the first or second pick of the second round, because the Browns had those 2 early picks. That's a high investment for running backs. We get so caught up in Ashton Genty being a top 10 pick and Omarion Hampton being a top 20 pick. Those were weird. Like, that's not what we normally see. A running back being the first pick of the second round, that's high draft capital for a running back. Don't think that just because 2 guys went ahead of him, that hurts Quinshon Judkins in any way, shape, or form. This is a lot of money the Browns have invested into Quinshon Judkins for a running back in a draft. So I think he's going to get every chance to win that role. And personally, what do they have to lose? Give this kid the ball.
I completely agree with you. I can't imagine what they have to lose at this point, because this wide receiver room, I mean, no disrespect to Jerry Jeudy or Deontay Johnson, because I know how talented Deontay Johnson is despite a lot of the personal problems he was having last year. I do not like this wide receiver room that the Browns have this year. I think it is garbage, especially with their lack of stability at quarterback. So speaking of quarterback, I think that's going to be my next pick here. Excuse me for 1 second while I do that. Let's go with McCarthy here. So J.J. McCarthy is going to be coming off that meniscus tear that he had during that preseason Week 1 game against the Raiders. What do you think is his future now that he's going to be handed the reins? I haven't read any drawbacks that he's had, any limitations so far as he recovered from it. This looks great. If Justin Jefferson made Sam Darnold look like $1 million, surely he can do the same thing for JJ McCarthy, right?
Yeah, and not even just Sam Darnold. Let's not forget Justin Jefferson was able to look good for Josh Dobbs a few years ago when they were having all of their issues. Justin Jefferson is the definition of quarterback proof. And then you have a situation where JJ McCarthy comes into the league from a very low passing volume college offense. We don't know what we're going to get out of this kid except for one thing: efficiency. And I think when you have efficiency in getting the ball into a wide receiver like Justin Jefferson and then throwing it out there, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones out of the backfield, this is the kind of offense where as long as he makes the right decisions, and based on his time at Michigan, there's no reason to think he won't, it's going to work out really well. Honestly, the meniscus tear, not that he was much of a runner, the meniscus tear, as someone who has torn their meniscus, now obviously I'm not a world-class athlete, it's likely to slow down his movement, which is going to force quicker decisions, quicker throws. That's all going to work out really, really well for the receivers in this offense.
Gosh, you never want to be the guy that knows from experience what these injuries are like, because they suck. Now, when Christian McCaffrey had his Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs last year, I was just cringing myself, because I used to be a serious marathon runner in my early 30s and even my late 20s. I've had Achilles tendonitis in one leg before, just from the simple case of overuse. It is not fun to go through. I really felt his pain on a much different, less elite scale compared to him.
Exactly.
So the quarterbacks went pretty quickly off the board. We have Michael Penix left. We have Jackson Dart left. If you didn't grab a quarterback by round 7 here, I think you're kind of screwed for the sake of this mock draft.
I'll disagree until it gets to my pick, and I'll tell you how I feel about it at my pick. I fully intend to go quarterback for anyone who is stream sniping us right now. But I'll tell you how screwed I feel. I will say, if we want to talk specifically about the last 2 rounds of quarterbacks, this is the value I was kind of alluding to. Brock's Gym waited on quarterback and gets Dak Prescott in the 6th round. I'm a little down on Dak this year, but in a 2 QB league to wait until the 6th round for Dak with the volume he should see, they shouldn't have an elite running game. They should have a terrible running game. And so I think Dak is a steal. McCarthy was another one. I am a Bryce Young truther through and through. I am so looking forward to what we may get out of Bryce Young this season. Duarte broke my heart making that pick 2 picks before me, because that was my pick. Now, I'm not upset Tyreek Hill falls to me all the way in the 7th round, but I will say not getting him there. So I am going to disagree with you. There is some really nice value on the board, including the guy I'm going to take that I think people are sleeping on. I'm going to go Michael Penix as my 3rd quarterback, just because this is a guy who has Drake London to throw to. Kyle Pitts, say what you will about him, he's still a decent receiver for the quarterback. And then Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier coming out of the background. I think Penix could be looking at a breakout year, and having him as my 3rd quarterback is exactly what I'm looking for. And there's still actually a couple more quarterbacks in my queue, so I think we're probably 1 round away from being completely screwed at quarterback.
Yeah, I'm just realizing this now too, which is why I'm glad that you pointed that out to me, because now I'm starting to look at the board and I'm like, okay, this could be some good late round value. And I'll give you an example right now. Boom. Sam Darnold, the new starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. I would love to have him as my quarterback 3, because a lot of people are going to be wondering, can he still get the job done without Justin Jefferson? And when you've got Jackson Smith and Jigba as arguably the best slot receiver in the league right now, you're not going to be too worried about Sam Darnold, are you?
Well, and not just that, they've done that. You have Cooper Kupp in that offense now. They went out and they still have Noah Fant, but they brought in Elijah Arroyo as a tight end. Now, rookie tight ends don't always pop right away. It's an interesting team they have around him there. The only concern you have for Sam Darnold is there any smoke or any fire in the Jalen Milroe smoke? They didn't take Milroe till the 4th round. It seems like Darnold's going to get every chance to win that starting job right from the rip. But Jalen Milroe is an interesting prospect. I don't think he's NFL ready for at least the next 2 seasons anyway. So I think Darnold's probably fine.
Just like I was saying on your rookie show last month, I am still out on every single quarterback except for Cam Ward. I think this is going to be a lousy draft class. Now, what I'm curious about out of all the rookie quarterbacks is will Who did the Pittsburgh Steelers take?
Will Howard out of
Will
Ohio State.
Howard.
Yeah.
So I love this potential opportunity that Will Howard is going to have as potentially playing quarterback if Mason Rudolph doesn't work out, because we still don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with the Steelers. All signs are kind of pointing in that direction, but then Rodgers is kind of yanking their chain at this point.
Yeah.
What do you think?
He made that cryptic comment to that fan this week where some fan joked about him coming to your Bears. And he said, I think the team I'm going to sign with is going to play in Chicago this year, and the Steelers do play in Chicago this season. So he certainly seems to be alluding to the fact that he's going there. But like you said, he's jerking their chain, and putting it bluntly, that seems to be what Aaron Rodgers is good for anymore. Like, the guy drives me nuts. He's always left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. He also mentioned to the media earlier today that he is not going to be a New Orleans Saint. He said himself that he does not want to live in New Orleans. So I think this is absolutely going to be the Tyler Shug show if nobody else steps up and plays better than him. But I am very much out on the Saints quarterback situation. Not so much for Chris Olave or Alvin Kamara, but just the fact that the Saints are not looking good again on paper this year. What do you think about this whole situation, Ryan?
It's an offense to stay away from. And then I think there are a lot of folks who are either all in or all out on Alvin Kamara. And I think he is such an interesting conundrum, because I think it's screaming that Kamara is moving at the trade deadline this year. I don't think Kamara is a Saint as we cross into the month of November. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. With the type of team they're going to have, somebody is going to take a shot and bring Alvin Kamara in on a trade.
If I'm not mistaken, Kamara still has some years left on his contract.
Just redid the contract last year. I 100% agree. But the fact of the matter is this: the Saints are already in cap hell. If you can get draft picks out of this, which can help you against the cap, you got to make that move. And right now, Alvin Kamara has no place on this Saints team, plain and simple.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. This is kind of a lousy way to play the back half of his career, as he's 29, soon to be 30. So I did pull up his contract just now. I'm looking at it. He's got this year and next year, and they voided the rest of the deal that had the potential for I believe it was a team extension that they could have given him.
I was going to say, it just happened last year, because people thought he was going to get traded last year.
Yes.
And then there was like a redo of his contract, but it must have just been a slight restructure, which the Saints constantly have to restructure everybody because of the ridiculous contracts they've given in the past.
Yeah, so right now it's a 2-year, $24.5 million contract. He's making $12.2.5 per year, which I think is very appropriate for his skill set, in addition to his age and injury history. So, like I said, he's got this year, and then next year is where the chunk of his money is going to go. So trading him, if they can find somebody willing to take on his contract, like let's say not the Cleveland Browns, but maybe the Dallas Cowboys, because that sounds like something Jerry Jones would do.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Dallas somehow in October is 4-4, I think that is a move they would look to make.
Yeah, so, but I'm still high on Alvin Kamara as far as draft rankings go this year. He is still in my top 15, because with Chris Olave's injury history, I mean, he's healthy, but you know, the concussions have definitely hurt his career. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I could see that he's taken several steps back between all the injuries that he's had and the offense being a complete mess with their instability at quarterback. Give me Alvin Kamara all day from that lousy offense.
Oh, 100%. I think it's going to work out well. But yeah, the concussions for Olave, those feel like the career-ending type of concussions, and like you just don't want to see him continuing to have it. And then you have these inexperienced quarterbacks throwing him the ball this year, which doesn't breed a lot of confidence that everything's going to just, be okay for Chris Olave heading into this season.
And like I said, I'm no doctor, but between him and Tua Tagovailoa, I worry about the health of a lot of these guys. I mean, they're making millions to play this game. They love this game, but we've lost a lot of great people over the years just due to CTE and injuries. You just hate to see them go further downhill with their health, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's terrifying. And then when you see some of the terrible things that happen to CTE after they leave the game, you just want these guys to protect themselves.
So we're coming up in the final 2 rounds here. So to my understanding, you don't have to draft a kicker, but it sure helps to get one that you like off the bat.
So what I'll throw out there for anybody who I don't remember how Scott has it broken down. I assume there are still Scott Fishbowl drafts on MFL. Kickers are far more interesting on MFL.com than they are on Sleeper. On MFL, you can flex kickers, and the kicking scoring in this league puts kickers. I did the math for this a few years ago when I was still on MFL. It puts kickers near the top 50 wide receivers, making them very interesting flex options. On Sleeper, you can only start one. There is no flex option, and you have to start one. So on Sleeper, you treat it just like any other fantasy league. Nobody is doubling up on kickers. You do not need to draft a kicker unless you are all in on a kicker. Don't fret about it. Obviously, Brandon Aubrey should be drafted in a Sleeper league. But for the most part, I am a person who has always given the advice, I will wait on kicker for as long as I can. Usually I won't even actually draft a kicker. I will wait on kicker and pick one up on waivers at the end. I'll play out all of training camp, seeing who is healthy on my roster, and then make a cut before that to grab a kicker. However, on MFL, kickers are far more interesting.
Mr. Scampers mentioned that all the lives are on Sleeper, just so that everybody knows. That's great for me because I have yet to get used to my fantasy league. The Eliminators League, with the FC Eliminators League, is the first one that I've ever done on my fantasy league. I'm in Jake Trowbridge. Shout out to you if you're listening, Jake. I'm in his, so I've never used my fantasy league before, so maybe it'll grow on me, maybe it won't. But I'm ride or die Sleeper.
It does some things very well. My fantasy league has one of the better free agency and waiver menus, but it's so hard to find some of the things that they do over there on MFL. There are some very cool tools. There are some things that are super antiquated. I prefer Sleeper for sure. My first Dynasty league ever was on MFL, and it gave our commissioner some really cool tools he could use. We literally just we're in the middle of transitioning to Sleeper this season. So.
Yeah. So I, like Mr. Scampers pointed out, I'm about to get that experience with the FCEs. And I have to, no disrespect, I kind of agree that it kind of needs a facelift as far as design goes. I don't know who's behind the team. Maybe they have all that they have for resources and what they know about developing the website, but I love the fact that it is seemingly the most customizable out of every single platform out there.
Exactly. There's some things it does well. There's some things it doesn't do well. And putting it bluntly, and I'm not going to sit here and bury MFL, but for a premium experience, you pay to have your leagues on MFL. There's a lot of room for improvement.
Heck yeah, absolutely. I wanted to go back a little bit because this was an interesting point brought up by Jamie, taking Khalil Shakir in the 10th round as a second to last wide receiver that Jamie did over here. What do you think about the Buffalo Bills passing game right now? They were kind of all over the place with getting their guys the ball. Kincaid got hurt, and there wasn't really seemingly a true number one wide receiver in this offense. Do you like Shakir's value this late?
Yeah, I've been a Shakir guy since he came out of Boise. I was happy when he ended up in Buffalo. Led the team in targets last year, hit that 100 target mark in only 15 games. You did mention Dalton Kincaid missed some time. Definitely didn't have by any stretch a good season, and that's concerning. But for the most part, I don't think we're going to see a major change. They have not invested in the wide receiver position. This seems like it is going to be Khalil Shakir's show once again. I love the pick. I think he's absolutely spot on that he is going to be that outlet. He is a better security blanket than Dalton Kincaid. When you deal with receivers like Khalil Shakir, kind of big slot guys, you worry about competition from the tight end, and I don't think we're going to get that out of Dalton Kincaid. It doesn't appear to be his game. Obviously, there's room for growth out of Kincaid, and I'm not completely burying him like some others are, but I don't think he's going to be much of a competition for Shakir this season.
And speaking of Buffalo Bills receivers, Josh Palmer is mentioned here by Index of Suspicion. If you drafted Gabe Davis with Josh Allen, you should be smashing Josh Palmer. Do you think Josh Palmer will fill in that deep threat Gabe Davis role like a glove, fitting like a glove?
Big Josh Palmer guy. And obviously I'm happy to see him go to a team where he is going to start right from day one. Los Angeles did everything they could to keep Josh Palmer on the bench. And I never understood it. When Josh Palmer played, he always put up really, really fun numbers. I think the AFC East is a good division for him. I think Buffalo is a great team for him. I'm hoping he's a little bit more consistent than Gabe Davis because he, Index of Sus mentioned, if you drafted Gabe Davis, I avoided Gabe Davis like the plague. If it wasn't best ball, I am not playing Gabe Davis. I can't guess which week he's going to pop. and that's not the fun part of fantasy football for me.
We absolutely cooked in this draft.
We had 11 of us stayed for the entire draft and one auto. Like, you guys killed it. What an awesome crowd.
Gosh, I'm going to have to go back and time this, but I believe we finished this mock draft a heck of a lot faster compared to last week. So kudos to all of you for being so enthusiastic and excellent in this draft. I have loved this so far. Ryan, let's go through every single team that drafted everybody that they did, just from a 10,000-foot view as you're glancing at everybody's teams. Whose do you like the best overall for the Scott Fish Bowl format? Just based on the first 12 players.
Yeah, just trying to glancing here. Saying who my favorite team is this early is not going to be easy, but I do want to go back and look at like what Brock's Gym did. So Brock's Gym gets Brock Bowers, easily the best tight end in fantasy football. Loads up on high volume wide receivers: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Lab McConkey, JSN. And then we were worried about the quarterbacks and the running backs. The quarterbacks, I feel like he solved his own issue. Dak Prescott, Geno Smith. You have 16 game starters, which is what you're hoping for out of a super flex. The running back waiting as long as he did, I do feel like, as much as I love Travion Henderson, his top 3 running backs and only 3 running backs through this stage are Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's the only one in there who may not be in a timeshare right now, and we don't know what kind of volume he's going to be able to handle. So I feel like waiting on running back hurt him a little bit, but I feel like he made up with it at so many other positions. When I pick my favorite team in a situation like this, I'm typically looking for who crushed it at quarterback. It's going to be hard to argue against Jamie. He comes out with Joe Burrow, Drake May, Tyler Shugg. You got Philadelphia, Alec, who has Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff. Obviously, Brocal double tapped with Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. And obviously, as I'm scrolling Brocal's team, you got Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, AJ Brown, who might be one of the most underrated assets in fantasy football right now. T. Higgins, who got his deal. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays. Goes with that Cincinnati offense. Never a bad decision going with multiple players from a good offense. Still gets Joe Mixon. I don't know how I feel about Isaiah Pacheco. Waited on tight end and grabs Isaiah Likely, which could worry you, except that he turns around and grabs Pat Freiermuth. Assuming Pittsburgh solves their quarterback situation, Pat Freiermuth is the number 2 wide receiver in Pittsburgh, and I think could have a really good year, certainly in a tight end premium format.
I have to agree with you on that last point as well. Ain't no way it's going to be Robert Woods, being 33 years old, entering his, 13th season in the league. The guy struggled to stay healthy over the last few years. No disrespect to the older wide receivers, but if Robert Woods is your wide receiver 2 on your football team at this point, you're in trouble. Trading George Pickens is definitely going to hurt this wide receiver depth chart this year. I don't think anybody else in their wide receiver depth chart outside of DK Metcalf is going to step up.
Yeah, it's and then I'm wondering how DK Metcalf feels if Aaron Rodgers doesn't end up in Pittsburgh. How is DK Metcalf feeling about his life right now? Because it seemed relatively clear he wanted out of Seattle. And then you go to Pittsburgh to finish 9-8, miss the playoffs and have 125 targets thrown to you by Will Howard. Like, that's not fun.
Well, that's the thing, is that I'm rooting for Will Howard's success just because of the sleeper quarterback value. Like I said earlier, I have him as my rookie quarterback number 3 right now because I love his opportunity. Now, if the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers, yeah, Howard's going to come down a little bit in those rookie rankings, but until we see Rodgers finally put that pen to paper, he's my quarterback 3 in rookie rankings, and I don't care who doesn't like it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair.
But coming back to Brian's team real quick here, Brock's Gym, his first quarterback off the board was Dak Prescott, and he took him in the 6th round. That's his first, I think, he is the only team that waited this long at quarterback. I love Dak Prescott going this late. I think a lot of people are forgetting about how excellent he is as a quarterback when he's healthy. He's always been a top 10 guy when he's healthy. He's got CeeDee Lamb to make his job easier. He can make Jake Ferguson look like $1 million. Adding George Pickens to this mix, speaking of the Steelers, this is going to be a more complete receiving room for him to work with. And now he's got running backs that I'm not so impressed with Javonte Williams or who was the guy they got behind him again?
They drafted Jaden Blue, and they brought in I am blanking. He was the backup in Carolina last year.
Miles Sanders.
Yeah, Miles Sanders. Yep.
Yeah, so that running back room has got to be bottom 5 in least amount of excitement anybody has for those running backs. So let me ask you about Dak Prescott, Ryan. The value this late, do you still think Dak has it at age 30?
So my issues are not with Dak Prescott. My issues are with Brian Schottenheimer, and he is the strangest coaching hire of the entire NFL offseason, and I don't know that I trust his offense. The chat is loving Dak Prescott right now. When I finished my first run of projections, I was appalled at myself of how low Dak Prescott came in on my projections. He is my QB 20 right now. Now, here's what I want to throw out there. I over project quarterbacks. And what I mean by that is I give everybody 17 or 16 games played. That's not going to happen in the NFL. So if Prescott is one of the ones that wins the battle of attrition and he stays healthy, he's probably a top 10 quarterback. I do think he's a 4,000-yard quarterback. What I'm concerned with is the touchdowns, because outside of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, I don't know who else is going to catch touchdowns in this offense. I overall, Brian Schottenheimer worries me. I'm not so worried about Dak, but I will agree with everything you said about the value in a 2-quarterback league of getting Dak Prescott where he did. I think this is a great pick. It would have been my pick. He was the reason when you brought up that you thought people were screwed. He was still on my board, and I'm like, they are not screwed because they are going to grab Dak Prescott and be absolutely fine. And that's exactly what Brian did here.
Yeah, I actually forgot that Brian Schottenheimer was replacing, I forgot, who was it Kellen Moore as the OC last year?
No, McCarthy ran his own offense last year.
That's right. McCarthy had it, and now he's got Brian Schottenheimer. But do they confirm, I'm sorry, I'm a little ignorant about the Cowboys. Did they confirm that Schottenheimer is going to run this offense, or is it still going to be McCarthy?
No. It's Schottenheimer's offense. Didn't they fire McCarthy? Schottenheimer's the head coach, if I remember correctly.
You know what's funny? I keep forgetting that McCarthy got fired from the Cowboys. That's how uninterested I am in the Dallas Cowboys.
It was so strange how Dallas played it, and they made it out like they wanted Schottenheimer right from the rip. So he is the head coach and will run his offense, and it's going to be a disaster.
Nothing at all like his father, Marty. And Jay Farr mentioned here, I didn't forget your comment, that Brian Schottenheimer is a run-first guy. Now, we just mentioned how uninspiring their running back room is right now. So does this have any trouble for the elite talent that the Cowboys have?
I don't think it does. And this is where I'm probably wrong about Dak Prescott, because someone else joked right after that Schottenheimer is a keep your job guy. And I do find that extremely interesting, because when you look at his running back room, we brought it up, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Jaden Blue, the rookie, Deuce Vaughn. This is not a running back core that's going to be able to rush much more than 400 times. So Dallas is likely to be a 600 passing attempt team. And when you have a receiver like CeeDee Lamb, that should work out great. You need George Pickens to be better than he was. You want to see Jalen Tolbert maybe take a step up as the wide receiver 3. If Dak Prescott can come out and throw 30 touchdowns like he did a couple of years ago, he's going to be absolutely fine. The touchdowns are what has me concerned. I think the biggest loser of the George Pickens acquisition is probably Jake Ferguson. But like I said, there is the run first aspect of Schottenheimer's game, and it does have me worried. When I do my projections, I look at who's going to call the offense and what their recent play calling statistics have been. Schottenheimer's recent play calling statistics are from 2019 and 2020. Both times were with Seattle. He never threw the ball more than 550 times. Keep in mind, this was a 16-game season. He never called more than 61 plays a game, which kind of puts him middle of the road in the NFL.
So speaking of running backs here, Mr. Scampers brings up that Nick Chubb would be potentially amazing for Dallas. So Ryan, Nick Chubb is still not on an NFL roster at this point, along with J.K. Dobbins. My Bears looked at J.K. Dobbins, but not yet Nick Chubb. Is Nick Chubb's career in jeopardy at this point? And is he going to sign with anybody?
It's concerning that it's been this late. I do think he's going to get a run. Everybody gets a run. Cleveland's already come out and said that it's not going to be with Cleveland, basically, which I find interesting. J.K. Dobbins, the Chargers threw a tender on Dobbins, and I think that could be scaring some teams off, because they now have to give something up if they want to go get Dobbins. So there's some interesting give and take there, where it seems like the Chargers are happy to bring him back on a relatively small deal. But with Chubb, Dallas is interesting, but I'll also throw out your Bears. He's a very different back than DeAndre Swift, and a very different back from anything they have on roster. I wouldn't mind seeing Nick Chubb there, and it kind of gives them a version of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery that Ben Johnson had in Detroit.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're missing right now on my Chicago Bears, where when Roschon Johnson was drafted a couple of years ago, I love the potential that young man had, but with all the problems that the offense had last year with practically no head coach running this team, Roschon Johnson didn't even look that good, even with the opportunities that he got, even when he was used as a goal line back, where DeAndre Swift's bread and butter is more of just run outside and get big gains whenever he can get those opportunities, which didn't come along a lot because the offensive line play was just horrible.
Putrid.
Oh, and that's what makes all of Chicago so glad that we got Ben Johnson to finally run this offense, where even though he didn't seem, well, I mean, I guess it's questionable how much he didn't like DeAndre Swift, where Detroit wanted him to be more an up-the-middle guy and don't go for the home run right away, where that's all Swift wanted to do in Detroit. Do you think with the signs pointing to DeAndre Swift staying in Chicago that there will be a smoother relationship between Ben and DeAndre Swift?
Yeah, I wonder. We can't look back at the Jahmyr Gibbs move and say that he made a mistake. I wonder if Ben Johnson just knew what he was doing. He knew Jahmyr Gibbs was that dude. And you can't fault him for moving on from a guy like DeAndre Swift for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. He doesn't have that. He didn't have that opportunity this year because Ashton Genty didn't make it to them. So there was no chance for him to do that replacement. Him jettisoning DeAndre Swift in Detroit may have been more of a Jahmyr Gibbs problem than a DeAndre Swift problem. I think DeAndre Swift is going to have a very interesting, certainly pass catching role in this offense. And I'm very excited because you guys put so much into that offensive line right after Ben Johnson took over, and you're doing the right things to put a functional offense on the field. And there's some very interesting fantasy parts of that offense.
We have no more excuses at this point for this offense. If everything succeeds, if all the pieces fall into place perfectly, this is going to be unprecedented for Chicago Bears history because the Bears have always been known as running the football and playing great defense. And the tradition is finally starting to fade away with the way that the league has changed over the years, where we don't even have a elite running back on paper. And I don't think DeAndre Swift is going to be a guy that turns into that, but if you get him as late as Brian did here, wasn't he the RB3? Yeah, that's his RB3. I absolutely love that value for DeAndre Swift this year as an RB3, like after Travion Henderson and Caleb Johnson. If this was the real start to a Scott Fish Bowl team, are you happy with this?
100%. There's nothing wrong with this team. One other fact that people need to be very aware of when it comes to Scott Fish Bowl is you only have to start one running back or one wide receiver. So going into a draft like Brian kind of did here and focusing on wide receiver, he only has to start one of these running backs. And interestingly enough, to start the year, it might be DeAndre Swift, to where he's going to be able to put all of these wide receivers on the field, all of his tight ends. He doesn't have tight ends, but in general, he got Cooper Kupp in the 12th round. So literally he's able to start all of these guys and only has to start one of these running backs. So this kind of start for Scott Fish Bowl, this kind of min-maxing that they call it in video games, where he stuck with his strengths and didn't worry about his weaknesses. It's a very interesting draft strategy. Quarterback's a tough position to punt on till the 6th round, but you walked out with two guys who are not in danger of losing their job this year. If you are going to punt on quarterback, that has to be your goal. Like Evan, you took Sam Darnold as your third quarterback, so I'm not taking a shot at you here. You can't walk away with Sam Darnold or Tyler Shugg or Anthony Richardson as one of your top two quarterbacks. They may not have a job 4 weeks into the season, and you're scrambling. And in Scott Fish Bowl, waivers are a nightmare for the first 4 weeks. People will spend their entire waiver budget on one quarterback just to make sure other people do not get it.
So it's a big game of keep away based off of the typical panic that we see among all of the fantasy football community, where there are so many people who just tilt in the first 4 weeks of just any league, no matter what.
Yeah.
100%. Gosh. But even then, like, as you mentioned here, Sam Darnold being my third quarterback, do you see Sam Darnold keeping that job all season in Seattle?
In my projections, I took 2 starts away from him. I'm not going to project him to flat out lose his job like I did with some of these other quarterbacks. I took 2 starts away from him. I think there's going to come a point where Darnold's either going to get hurt. Darnold's not afraid to move, and Darnold will take a hit. And there's going to be a chance they're going to want to see what Jalen Milroe can do for them at some point. I don't think, again, I don't think Milroe's ready to be a professional in this first year, but I do think he provides an athleticism that Darnold certainly doesn't. And there's going to come a point where Seattle's going to probably want to see what they have from him.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if that's the case, considering the capital they spent on Milroe. Calvin brings up an interesting question here. So, to my understanding, Scott Fish Bowl doesn't do big changes every single year. It's like a small incremental change. Do we expect this lineup setup to change this year?
I don't expect the lineup setup to change. The only thing I expect to change is the kick return points. Kevontae Turpin can't be your third wide receiver, your third ranked overall wide receiver. So I think we went a little overboard last year. What's interesting is everybody kind of went a little overboard last year. The change in kick return last year actually didn't change NFL kick return numbers all that much. The reason Turpin shot up is Turpin is one of the few guys who handled every kick for the Dallas Cowboys, and he would bring every kick out. There were still a ton of people taking touchbacks last year, far more than what fantasy analysts expected. So Turpin is an interesting case study that I think we're going to see hurt the position a little bit, the position being kick return. So I think 10 points for a touchdown, I think we could see go down maybe a little bit, maybe even just to a regular touchdown of 6 points. And then what is it? 1 point every 5 yards. That almost certainly is going to go to every 10 yards at best. So,
yeah, and just going with the theme of just incremental changes in the scoring every single year. That sounds completely plausible. I mean, I'm coming from an ignorant mind, but you sound pretty sure about it, so I'm gonna believe you and hope that it's something like that.
Yeah, the only thing I would want him to bring back, he's not going to, is negative points for quarterbacks, but he's not going to do that. So I just don't see it happening. The whole point is for as many points as possible, for everyone to have as much fun as possible. So I don't see him going back to negative quarterbacks. I love penalizing quarterbacks. I'm a masochist when it comes to fantasy scoring that way. So
we've gone a little over an hour. We're going to start to wrap things up here. So speaking of fun, Ryan, this was a lot of fun tonight with you. Thank you so much for being my guest tonight. I loved every second of this.
Yeah, Evan, I appreciate you. I made this joke in the chat. I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm intimidating now or what, or if I'm just irrelevant, but I have not been invited to many guest spots. So it was fun to come and be a guest on a show where I didn't have to prepare as the host. You did an excellent job hosting, and I just got to talk about these players in this game that we love so much. So I very much appreciate you for reaching out. It was really fun to do a guest spot again. So.
Heck yeah. So before we get out of here, I just want to mention just a couple of things. First things first, everybody who mock drafted with us tonight, thank you for joining us. You guys were excellent. Don't forget to subscribe to Optimus Fantasy if you're watching this on YouTube. Check out our sponsor as well, Fast Draft Fantasy. Download the app if you love yourself some best ball and DFS. Use our code Optimus when you sign up, and you will get a first-time deposit match of up to $50. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan. Once again, thank you, Ryan Weisse. Thank you to everybody who mock drafted with us this evening. It is darn near impossible to do a mock draft show without folks like you mocking with us. I will be back next week with a new surprise guest who will join me for a very early one quarterback PPR redraft mock draft. If you follow Chicago Bears content creators on YouTube, I think you're going to recognize him next week. Wink, wink. Coming to you live on Optimus Fantasy, I'm Evan Sather. Have a great night. I'll see you all next week.